Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Woodstock, Georgia, it's time for Cherokee Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to another exciting and informative edition of Cherokee Business Radio. Stone Payton here with you this morning. And today's episode is brought to you in part by our local small business initiative, the Business RadioX Main Street Warriors, defending capitalism, promoting small business, and supporting our local community. For more information, go to mainstreetwarriors.org. A special note of thanks to our title sponsor for the Cherokee chapter of Main Street Warriors, Diesel David Inc. Please go check them out at dieseldavid.com. You guys are in for a real treat this morning. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast with EOS Worldwide, Miss Andrea Young. How are you?
Great, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are delighted to have you on the show. I got 1,000 questions. I know we're not going to get to them all, but I think a good place to start is if maybe you could articulate for me and our listeners mission, purpose. What are you and EOS really out there trying to do for folks?
Oh, well, we are entirely trying to help business owners and their leadership teams get what they want out of their business. So that is our big focus. And we do that through a very, simple set of processes to drive discipline inside a company called EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System is what it's called.
So I got to know the backstory. How in the world did you find yourself in this line of work? What led you here?
Well, I am a former client, as a matter of fact. My husband and I started a company over 10 years ago in the sports and entertainment business. And we found that we were just, working our tails off and just felt like we were leaving some money on the table. And we had a really great leadership team, but everyone sort of had a different idea of where they wanted to see the business go. And so we ended up implementing EOS in 2018. And it was a total game changer. We were able to triple our profitability in 12 months. We doubled our revenue. And importantly, we got all of our leadership team members focused in the same direction, rowing in that same direction. And that was just so powerful. And so having seen that, I decided to leave the corporate world after 20 years of building brands and working in a big organization and do EOS full time, so I could help other business owners grow and scale up their business and get what they want out of their business.
So at this point in your career and in doing this work, what are you finding the most rewarding? What are you enjoying the most about it?
Well, I love growth. I kind of see myself as a growth master, having spent so much time in innovation and corporate strategy. And so I get so excited by helping other business owners and their leadership teams grow, to really scale their business, to get the results that they're looking for. And so that has been very exciting and very rewarding for me in this chapter of my career.
I'm sure every situation is different, but I got to believe you must run into some common patterns, like see some of the same kinds of things over and over again, things that entrepreneurs are excited about, frustrated about, challenged with. Is that accurate?
For sure. One of them is just this notion of control and feeling like their business is running them instead of them running their business. And this, it's chaotic. And so that is one aspect of, we kind of joke about it being, you're kind of like running behind the van where the doors are flapping open and you just want to get into that driver's seat. And so that can certainly be a big challenge. Another one is, what I talked about earlier in my case, which was profitability. So you put so much of your heart and your energy and your time into your organization, and it is your baby. But if you're not getting what you want out of or in return, that can be very frustrating sometimes. And so that's another one. People issues is a very common challenge too, that everyone I come across experiencing. And so, how making sure you've got the right people in the right seats and that you're creating the culture that you want. So those are just a couple of the big challenges that seem to be very commonplace.
Well, as you were describing it, I feel like I resemble that remark, right? I mean, so my business partner and I, we own the Business RadioX network, and we've been blessed in so many ways. And it's not at all uncommon for each of us, sometimes at the same time, but fortunately, often it'll be either him or me, where we feel like we're losing our grip, right? We things are just getting a little bit crazy. And for me, I think it often happens. I have a tendency to chase shiny objects and get yet another idea. So I know that happens to us a lot. So where does the work start? It seems like for me, it would be even difficult to get my arms around. Okay, we want to make some improvements. We want to change some things, but where do you start? Or is there a typical starting place with a client?
There is, yes. We really focus on three things, and the first one is vision. So, everybody's got all these great ideas in their head, and so it's really about articulating where it is you want to go, how you're going to get there, and then getting your entire team rowing in that same direction. And the second one is traction. So without if we don't have the traction, then it just doesn't become real. And so we've got a really simple set of disciplines and tools to hold people accountable so that you're making that vision a reality. There's an action plan associated with it, and so that makes sure that vision is happening. And then the third one is around having a healthy culture. And so as part of this process, having that kind of team culture that you want for your organization is incredibly important so that you've got a collaborative and cohesive team that's working together. Because you spend so much time together, working together, that you better make sure you enjoy it. So that if we've got those three things, then everything else kind of falls into place.
I'll bet. So the early stages of an engagement, are you having a conversation with the executive team or the owners to figure out where to put most of the energy? Is it what happens very early on in the engagement?
Our very first day is, the very first step actually is having what we call a 90-minute meeting. So it's an introduction to what EOS is all about, so that everyone is on the same page. They understand the process and some of those big concepts and what it is that we're trying to do in this. And then we spend a whole day together. We kind of roll up our sleeves. It's a full day workshop that we call Focus Day, so that you're hitting the ground running by having thought out a few things. So one is an accountability chart. So you're identifying who the right people are, what the right structure is for your organization for the next 6 to 12 months. We work on having a scorecard and actually measuring how are you performing? What are the key business indicators that you really need to be paying attention to that give you that sense of how your business is performing. We get to something that we call rocks. And so those are priorities or commitments. So if you think about what do you need to accomplish? What does everyone need to accomplish over the next 90 days so that you're making that vision really happen. So you're focused and you've got those commitments and you've aligned on what those are. And so we come away with some of those tools as well as explaining how to run a really great meeting, because meetings can often suck. And so on that first day, we walk through, how do you spend your time together? How often? What do you cover? That kind of thing, so that you can hold each other accountable and you can have a meeting of time that's well spent, and that you're getting things done. So those are just a couple of examples of how we would spend our first day together and the things that you walk out with.
I would think just that 90 minutes would be incredibly valuable. I feel like you've been listening in on some of our phone calls or eavesdropping at some of our meetings, because although we don't necessarily know what to do about it, we can feel that, this isn't as efficient and as effective as it ought to be. And, Maybe we do have. I had a mentor one time tell me about the analogy he used was getting a goldfish to climb a pine tree. Like there's things that a goldfish can do really well, but it's sometimes and we've made this mistake in our own organization. We got some great people who have tremendous skills, and we got them doing the wrong stuff.
Right.
That's just one piece of what you're talking about, right?
Well, that can happen all the time, especially in entrepreneurial organizations. You're wearing a lot of hats, and some hats fit better than others. And so I think it's about understanding what the right seats are on this bus that is your organization, and what the roles are for each one of those seats. And then you have to figure out, okay, who is the right person to get that job done. And it's a two-way street. You want to put them in a role where they are going to be so happy. They're going to love what they're doing and be really successful at it. And then at the same time, get the results that you're looking for. So, it is a win-win.
So this methodology, this structure, this, I guess methodology maybe is the right nomenclature for it. What's its origin? Is there an organization that this EOS and now you plugged into it as a client, right? And now you got enamored with it. But what's the origin of the structure?
So EOS first came about by a gentleman by the name of Gino Wickman. And he was an entrepreneur himself, got brought into his dad's organization to really turn things around, and worked with the leadership team for a number of years doing that. And at the same time, he was part of the EO network in one of the original chapters in Detroit. And through that, he saw this opportunity and knew he had a real talent for the art and science of running a business. And so he cobbled together some of the best concepts and tools out there and wrote a book by the name of Traction. And,
okay, I know this book.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this book has been around for over 15 years. It is often on the bestsellers list amongst entrepreneurs, and it really explains how EOS works. And I think the beauty of it is it's not just, it's more than the concepts, more than the theories and the tools. It is about how do you make it a reality? Like, how do you make it happen? So that's why it's called Traction, because that is the biggest, I think, the biggest benefit to it.
So I want to circle. Let's talk about me for a minute, right? Because it is my show. So I want to circle back to us. I know I sometimes get the feeling, and I hang out with other entrepreneurs as well, and so I know I'm not the only one. But I feel like it's one thing to put out a fire and get past it and keep going, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like we've solved this. We should have this baked. Like, do you find that people fall into that pattern and they keep putting out the same fires over and over, and they really don't have it baked, I guess?
Well, and how frustrating can that be, right?
Very. Yes.
It's like, oh, we've seen this show before. Yeah, so that is a key component of the EOS system, is to create an environment where people are celebrated for identifying issues and putting issues on the table. And then we devote quite a bit of time to actually solving those issues. And we do it through a process we call it IDS, which is about identifying, getting to the root cause of what is that issue. Because if you can't get to the root cause of it, you can't solve it and put it away for good. And so that is really important to spend the time on that, briefly discussing it, and then solving it and brainstorming. Okay, what are our different options? How are we going to solve that as a team? And then who's responsible for that action plan, and getting to a very clear list of to-dos. And that type of process really helps to knock away at some of those issues that keep coming up daily or weekly or annually, whatever that looks like, so that they don't keep coming up. So you're solving them one by one for good.
But it's getting at the root cause. And I got to say, to me, it's easy to fall into the trap. Okay, solved it, put out that fire, move on to the next thing. But I didn't really solve it. I just
It's easy to do that. It's easy to say, oh, our revenue's down this quarter. Okay, but why is it down? And what exactly is causing that to happen? And so you get down to that root cause and you ask, keep going layer by layer until you say, okay, well, this is what's causing that to happen. And then that's where you devote your time as, okay, how are we going to solve that? What are the right solutions and who's going to be responsible for doing that? So that's, I think, a big difference is and the amount of time. So it's not just report, you spend your meeting time not reporting out on, spending the entire time reporting out on things, but actually you're working together to solve things as well. And that can be a really powerful, for the team, for the organization, the culture, in terms of driving results, but then also feeling like you're part of a team, you're part of that solution, part of the scaling of it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about meetings too, because I do feel like, we'll have these calls, and I feel like a lot of the information that is transferred, that probably could have been handled a different way, right? Like, here's the data, here's what happened, and here's, and maybe we ought to be investing our conversation differently than just reporting what happened last week, or is that one of the disciplines or one of the mindset shifts is let's get the reporting and the things that could be communicated more effectively, more efficiently in a different way, get that out there so that we can spend the human time working on the more complex stuff?
Well, it's so common for people to be, meeting after meeting after meeting. Then they get out of their meetings. They've spent like 6-7 hours in meetings. And then that's when the work starts. And by that time, they're exhausted. It is the end of the day. They got other things to do. And so what this process does, and it's been really effective for the teams I work with, is that you spend 90 minutes together once a week as a leadership team, and we have a very prescribed way of how you spend your time, so that you're doing some of the reporting, but then you're spending the majority of your time issue solving. Whether it's challenges or bottlenecks or ideas or opportunities. But though that time is very precious for making sure that you're getting what's in the way out of the way, and you're getting some of the best solutions and leveraging the collective genius of the people that are in the room to make that happen.
You also mentioned earlier in the conversation this concept of a scorecard. Mm-hmm. Say a little bit more about that.
I meet a lot of companies, and they don't have. You ask them how they're performing, and they can kind of give you some of the top line levels, but they're not really tracking what's driving their business. And so, and in today's world, you may have a data pond or you may have a data ocean, but you got a lot of numbers out there. And what's critical is saying, okay, what are the key metrics? The 5 to 15 numbers maximum that we really need to be paying attention to, and paying attention to on a weekly basis so that you can do something about it. If you're seeing trends and stuff like that happening, then you have an opportunity to action them, and before it's too late. So you're not reporting on what happened, yesterday. Rather, you're forecasting what's going to happen tomorrow, and you're spending your time on those kind of key business indicators that really give you a glimpse of what that looks like. And it could literally be, depending on the organization, their scorecard can actually be a very unique part of them. So it could be anything from a Google ad rating to the number of trips they need to make to a store to pick stuff up that they forgot to order, to other metrics that are more key, like employee satisfaction or customer satisfaction numbers, that kind of thing. And it depends on the organization, so it's very custom to each client and what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
I'm finding this very helpful. Gang, if you really want to get some great free consulting advice, get yourself a radio show. You talk to smarter people, you get to learn a ton. But no, as you were talking, I'm thinking, like, we have our studio partners, the people who run studios, like the one we're sitting in right now. We have several different revenue streams, right?
Right.
And so it makes sense to me that we could track each of them and see if one of them's really starting to dip. Okay, this is an important thing. So So, revenue for example, like doing on-site remote broadcast at events and stuff, right? That's a key thing. And we could look back maybe at last year and the year before and say, okay, now at COVID, probably, as you might imagine, had an impact on ours. But that might be like a key metric for us to keep for each studio partner to keep an eye on, right? Is that an example?
Yeah, that would be an example. I think you'd, the other important thing to add to it is you kind of have to know what good looks like. And so you need a goal to be able to compare to and say, okay, what do we expect this to be? And then is it tracking below or above where you anticipate it? But having that goal can be really important too. So it's not just measuring a metric, but whether you're winning or not.
Yeah. And don't just look at last year's on-site remote broadcast revenue, look at last quarters or if not last months, right? But
it could be, however you kind of see it as important to your business. So it could be versus budget, could be versus last month or last quarter,
right.
Whatever makes sense for your company.
But don't let it go, stay on top of it. Don't let it go too long because then you can't do anything about it.
That's right. That's why we track it on a weekly basis. Otherwise, you end up at the end of the year and you're like, wow, there's nothing you can do about it now except, count your chickens, I guess.
So do you ever find that some entrepreneurs, particularly founders who, like you say, have worn a lot of hats and, they've created this thing with their own blood, sweat, and tears, do you find that initially they're a little reluctant to embrace all this structure? Or by the time you're talking to them, are they like, for God's sake, help? We need we know we want structure.
Yeah, I think they see the value in it because they've grown and built their business to a point where, and that's an amazing feat. But then they get to a point where they hit the ceiling and they how do you scale it up beyond that? And they want to get to that next chapter, but what's gotten them so far can't get them further. And so then this takes the mystery out of figuring out, okay, how are we going to unlock that door or break through that ceiling? And so that is can be very powerful and helpful to them. So I see that, we get a lot of energy that way. And then I think the other thing is, you mentioned it earlier. There are lots of different ideas and concepts and all that kind of stuff out there. And again, this takes the mystery out of which ones do I do, because this is a proven system and it's very simple. And so it's not about a flashy new thing. It is, this is a really easy way to run a business, and it's been proven time and time again. So
how does the whole sales and marketing thing work for a practice like yours? Like, how do you get the new business or even get to have that initial 90-minute kind of conversation?
Well, we are all business owners that run our own businesses within EOS Worldwide, and the best way is through referrals, because a company sees, they live this experience, they see those great results, and then they want to pass it forward to friends or family that are also struggling in their companies, and they've seen the success, and so they want to, help other companies and business owners get what they want too. So that is certainly the most powerful way, for sure.
So doing good work is marvelous sales tool, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, the reason I asked is it strikes me that your work is so dependent on trust. I mean, you really have to trust your EOS person, because you are letting them in, right? For you to be able to effectively serve them. The level of trust that you must be able to develop with a client, it must be incredible. I mean,
we end up, playing a couple different roles ourselves. So you're the coach. So you kick them in the butt when things aren't going that, they're not moving along, or you're patting them on the back when things are going really well, and you got those attaboys or attagirls. And then we facilitate, and so often the answers are in the room, and there's so much brilliance there, and so you need to be a master facilitator to be able to make sure those voices are heard, and then everyone can get aligned. And then we play the role of being a teacher as well. So there's an aspect of training and learning some of these new concepts and tools, and making sure that they become experts on this too. so that they can continue to grow and run their own organizations and be able to run it all the way through the company to all the different levels.
And so we talked about early on in the engagement, but as you're talking now, as this thing unfolds, you're not leaving them hanging. You're in there while you're empowering them. You're there to help. You used the word facilitator a few times. So you swing back around, you share the structure with them, but you're also helping them along the way. There's say more about that.
Yeah. We typically work with companies for about 2 years. But it can vary and so the idea is that, yes, you're teaching them, you're training them, you're giving them kind of those foundational tools and then helping them to execute and master them until they don't need you anymore. And that is the goal, is to get them so they've got the confidence, the mastery, the ability to run on their own. And
that's a refreshing model. That's not how I'm from the training consulting world. A long, long time ago, before I met Lee Cantor and my world changed, I came from that training consulting world. And just for those of you who don't know, that is not necessarily the model for all consulting.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a scaled learning process that you share some tools, they go away, and they come back, and we kind of work through, okay, what did you learn, what doesn't work, what does work, and you do version 2.0 and then version 3.0 till you get to a point where they're really happy and they've got the right scorecard, they've got the right accountability chart. But part of that is not just learning it in classroom style, that kind of thing, but actually doing it and living it and saying, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and modifying it. So that is part of our process, is to be able to coach and facilitate to get to a point where they are seeing amazing results and really happy with, making that vision a reality.
Yeah. And even with that capability transfer, the other thing that seems like it would be really helpful is to have that common language, that common nomenclature, so that everybody's speaking the same language, talking about the scorecard and accountability. And when you give everyone in the organization and the people who are helping them that common language, that's got to be powerful, I would think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's absolutely important to have the same language, to be using the same system. It just makes you a lot more efficient, takes a lot of the duplication and confusion out of it. And if everyone's talking the same talk, then guess what? They're going to walk the walk as well. So, that can be really powerful.
So I've come to learn over the years that competency itself can be a bit of a moving target because conditions, circumstances, environments change. So the skill set and the proficiency that you may have once had is not necessarily going to be enough to continue it. This is a question. It's not an observation. Is accountability a moving target too? I mean, do you find that you need to help your clients incorporate systems, processes to keep people how do you keep them accountable?
You do have to have those systems in place where they're held accountable to themselves, to their leader, but then also their teammates. And so that helps certainly to making sure that you're getting things done, because no one wants to sit there and say, oh, I'm off track, or I haven't completed this priority that I was working on. And so that can be a really important thing. I think it also helps with that kind of squirrel syndrome of saying, when you've got so much information coming at you these days and so many different opportunities, and what this helps you do is to focus as well. So you know what to say no to and what it is you're focusing on working on. And so that can be certainly exponentially, help you to exponentially grow as well. So that can be really powerful.
You just brought up an interesting perspective that reminded me of playing sports. Mm-hmm. And I never got really good, but my father was a high school basketball coach. I was involved in sports, and I got to play like high school level ball. But you mentioned being accountable to your teammates. Mm-hmm. And that was, as I reflect on that was more important to me and probably more of a driver for all of us than even trying to be accountable to the coach or... You want to be accountable to your teammates if that all goes all the way back to your comment about culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to let anyone down or to be the weak link in the organization. Everyone's counting on you. And so, making sure that you're getting things done, you're delivering what you committed on, can become so important. And that social connection is a big piece of that as well, for sure.
Yeah. So I know because I did my pre-show research, meaning that you were an executive at a little company some of you may recognize called Coca-Cola.
Right.
and then you're doing this work. Have you had the benefit of one or more mentors along the way to help you navigate the terrain in those different environments?
Oh, I've had so many great mentors in my life. I've been really, really lucky. I've got a big thirst for learning, and I've had great leaders that have allowed me to learn, who've given you the ropes to do your own thing and then come back and get support when you need it, but really empower you to run your business the way that you need to. And so I'm really fortunate to have had a few really great bosses that I still keep in touch with to this day. We've moved on to different things and so on, but their friendships, their advice is just invaluable. And that's been part of the benefit, I think, of being in that corporate world as well. So I feel really lucky. Well,
and now you get to be a mentor, right? Because that's just part of what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm paying it forward, I think. I got all that formal training and great advice along the way. The corporate world and entrepreneurial world are different, but there are a lot of commonalities as well, and there's beauty in both of them. And so it's, how do you find that to and use that to your maximum?
So outside the scope of your work, the work that we're talking about, what passions what other passions do you pursue? Most of our listeners, my listeners, know for me, it's travel, hunting, and fishing. But it's something outside the scope of your work, what are some of the things that you have a tendency to nerd out about or really enjoy doing?
Well, I'd say the top two. So I'm a big traveler as well. I've been 64 countries so far and counting. Yeah. Whoa. Love to travel. I love the adventure and learning about new places and trying different foods and having new adventures and all that kind of stuff. It's great. And then the other one is downhill skiing. So I'm Canadian.
Oh my.
Which means I started skiing almost at the same time I started walking. And I love the sport, and I'm teaching, getting my girls into skiing and stuff like that too. It's something we do as a family. So that's both of those just, make my heart swell.
I got it. We before we came on air, I was telling you about my recent trip to Spain, and I do feel like, and my wife's father said this, and I believe it's true, that travel it broadens you, right? It gives you a new, different, wider perspective, and I have found that I thoroughly enjoy experiencing other cultures, and I walk away. I don't know the first thing about downhill skiing, but the travel we have really come to enjoy, and I don't have any hard data to prove it, but I think those experiences probably help me make other people's lives richer and help me be more effective when I get back off vacation and dive back into my work, maybe.
Yeah, I think it helps you to appreciate different viewpoints, different cultures that are out there, to be more to be open-minded to, people and their situations and the worlds that they're growing up in and living in, and it also makes you appreciate all the beauty in the world too, from environmental to just everything. And so I have absolutely treasured all of those trips, and we make it a point to travel as much as we can because we love it so much as a family even.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. All right, before we wrap, I'd love to leave our listeners, if we could, with just a few pro tips. And number one pro tip, gang, if any of these topics are striking a chord with you, and if you're an entrepreneur, I know they are, number one pro tip is reach out and have a conversation with Andrea. But even short of that, Are there things that we can be reading, things we should be doing or not doing, maybe looking for a few, if not red, yellow flags in our organization that suggest us, hey, it's time to set up a call or reach out to Andrea, a couple of things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I think if you're facing any of those kind of struggles, like, the life is chaotic again, or you're spending all your time working and not having time, you don't have time to take those vacations and travel, or to have the fun that the business is running you instead of you running the business. Or you feel like you've got some people challenges, or you're just not getting what you want out of the business in terms of the size or the growth, then the book Traction is a great way to do it. Or you can reach out to me if you don't have time to read it. Then I'd be happy to give you the live movie version, if you will, of it. And there we go. My email address is andrea.young@eosworldwide.com.
All right. So let's make sure we have that again. So the book is Traction. The author of the book you mentioned,
Gino Wickman.
And then the best way to reach out to you is email. Is that the best?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. And what's that address again?
Andrea.young@eosworldwide.com.
Well, Andrea, it has been an absolute delight having you in the studio. Thank you for coming to visit with us. And thank you for the work that you're doing. The work you're doing is important. I genuinely believe that. And I hope you'll keep it up. And I hope you won't be a stranger. I hope you'll come back and visit sometime. I tell you what could be fun if you're up for it sometime. If maybe you came in with a delighted client.
Oh, yeah.
And we could talk about their business. And so, we'll profile their business and learn about that, but also maybe talk about the work. That could be a fun segment.
Yeah, my clients are awesome to work with, and they would love to tell their success stories. So that would be super fun. I'd love that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Stone. This has been great.
My pleasure. All right. Until next time, this is Stone Payton for our guest today, Andrea Young with EOS Worldwide, and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you again on Cherokee Business Radio.